(1501) Broning Highway in the rear, 1031 B&E. 1501 Broning Highway in the rear, 1031 B&E.
Kids had broke into the liquor store, tore the screen off, throwing whiskey, beer out in the street.
I saw kids no more than maybe 7, 8 years of age taking items out of stores and what have you. Women pulling, I saw a woman pushing a refrigerator down Pennsylvania Avenue. I couldn't believe it, just like it was on a sled. And she was moving along maybe 3 miles per hour, and somehow or another she got it where she was going, because when I came back at that same spot, it was gone.
What they didn't take, they broke up.
It looked like it started out as a game with the kids, and then it just spread like wildfire. It spread like wildfire. You see people running with tables and chairs and furniture on their backs and everything, and then the police was unable to do anything.
As soon as we can regain our mobility, we'll have it under control. But as long as those side streets are closed the way they are, we're on the main arterials. The main arterials we're handling very well, but it's the side streets that are causing the problems, because the people come out, hit the places on the side streets, and then they disappear again, and we can't get in there.
Gotcha.
Vandalism, destroying just for the art of busting up everything, taking out everything they can get their hands on. It's a terrible mess, terrible, and it's a big loss.
Are you going to stay here? How does it make you feel about doing business on Baltimore Street?
Well, what else can I do? I own the building. I can't move the building, so I've got to stay here. But unfortunately, other people that I know all around town are going to have to go out of business if they don't get any insurance coverage.
How does it make you feel about the city?
Well, I've always been for the city. I wouldn't have come over here and taken a building that was all wrecked and torn up and spent a lot of money. Mind you, my own money. I never got anything from the city or from any agency. Did it with my own money because I had a lot of faith in the city.
Do you still?
I still have it. Still have it. I'm going to be in business.
I can't say that I'm happy. There were about 500, 1,000 people that destroyed everything that we worked for so hard for the last couple of years. But from that, we'll build again. I just can't understand how people can stand and watch youngsters and others just steal televisions and radios and liquor and do nothing about it.
Then we want the same.
One way or another. But you know, the few thing that happened is his office called me yesterday and said they had the merchants go out and shovel the storm drains. That's enough to make you want to kill.
We service maybe 10,000 families in our business. They didn't all turn on me. And I don't think it was a question of really turning on me. I think it was a question of being able to do these things and not be caught.
You want to let me out and lock up after I get out there? We've just gone through about 3 years of heavy remodeling. I rebuilt some of the damage after the police strike, and we weren't touched during the riots at all. But how many times can you constantly rebuild and then live under the threat of this happening again? Now you're in front of one of them. Good. You're in Coffins. This is Coffins. They tore the... You can see exactly what happened. A few opportunists took advantage of a situation that we feel was sort of not inspired by the media, but that was exacerbated by the media and the unpreparedness of the city. And as I said, it just had an effect of almost mob psychology.
Most of the merchants in the Old Town Mall will pick up the pieces and probably reopen, provided the mayor guarantees their security in the future. But it will be a long time before the people here trust city government or those they do business with. I'm Fran Fanchel for Channel 2 News. I know. How do you feel about what happened here? Do you want to continue being a merchant in Old Town?
Well, I'm willing to reopen, and I think the city has an obligation to take care of the things that are important to them, and I think this business community is important to the city, both in the money investment they have and the services that we offer to the community around us and to the people that we employ.
But what about the people who shop here and who, in fact, looted your store? You say you give them credit. Why would you want to go back into business dealing with these people who seem to have turned on you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think they all haven't turned on me, but I think, and I know these people, I don't think it was any personal vendetta against me. If I thought that, I positively would not stay here.
You seem to blame the city for what happened.
I think the city has an obligation to protect the community, and I don't believe they did all that they could have done, and I don't believe that they were prepared as well as they should have been. We know it snows in the winter, and we know we have the National Guard, and we have avenues open to us, open to them, and they should have been prepared to act immediately, I believe.
So they let you down?
Yes, I believe they did, and I don't believe we can live unless we have contingency plans to cover a similar situation if it should happen again.
But you're willing to give them another chance?
I'm going to give them another chance, and I think as a rational mayor and government that we live under, I can't believe that they would not take steps immediately to come up with these contingency plans that would be acceptable to us and to them. If we lose, if I lose, they lose. And we're really in it together. They can't say to me that I'm going to lose and they're not, because if I leave this area, I think it would be a catastrophe for the city. They spent $8 million in here, and We service a lot of people, thousands of families around here. If we lose, it'll be a catastrophe for the city. When Baltimore was made the All-American City, I was one of the speakers. I was one of the reasons that they won the award. And this mall is one of the reasons. I worked for 12 years to get this mall implemented. And for the city to lose its star, its shining star, would be a terrible thing.
Thank you.
I think she's right only to the point that it's going to be a revolution of the middle class. A turning.
They're in the shot.
This is the kind of dedication that's been out here in this cold and in the snow for 2 days. The riots weren't over. They had hours. They had days of warnings of the riots. They didn't bring the guard in until the next day. Yet they knew the strike was coming. They were told in advance. I don't know if there's any legal ramifications for bringing the guard in. I don't protect these citizens. More like my wife had been in and I were in here since.
Okay, Fran.
Okay. You are obviously very bitter about what happened.
Yes, I am. I'm bitter at the city administration, and I'm bitter at the news media, especially television personalities, who make irresponsible comments without any regard to the repercussions that they can cause by making announcements such as the police are out on strike, like they did previously, and or that the police are snowbound and cannot move in the city. The city administration, I think on this is the third occasion in which they've shown an extremely poor judgment in not calling in additional help when they knew that there were to be riots. Those were announced days ahead of time. They knew that the police were going on strike. The city should have been protected by other means. And in this instance, the looting had started on the west side of the city, and there was hours advance notice.
Are you planning to come back?
I don't know that I'd want to. How Mayor Schaefer can sit there and call these minor things. If his home looked like my store, I don't think he'd feel it was a minor thing.
You indicated that you were surprised when you were informed that your alarm was going off. You didn't think something like this could happen?
No, I really didn't. I didn't think that the people in East Baltimore were still capable of things like this, because I guess especially with us, and it can be a little egotistical because we're part of this community. We've been in it. I'm friendly with many of the community leaders. I'm responsive to many of the needs of the community. When they need a Santa Claus over here at the school for the kids, Hattie Harrison calls and we respond. I went over and played Santa Claus for the kids. Some of the kids come in here, they're out of work, they need money. I've loaned them money, and it's probably the same ones that were in here with hammers busting these showcases.
But why?
Because they haven't been taught any better, and because they were never punished for the other times that they did it. And if their parents couldn't correct them and let them know it was wrong and teach them to respect other people's property, then it becomes the responsibility of the authorities to do so. They let them get away with looting like this on I don't know how many other occasions, and so why shouldn't they continue? And they will. And our police department, God bless them, they really stood up this time with it and hung in there. We've got superheroes there. And if it hadn't been for them, the things would be a hell of a lot worse. We've got some of the policemen I know have been down here for 36 hours and longer. But they can only do so much. They do need the city to back them up. And one of the things they could back them up with is, I'd like to explore why the police department is so shorthanded.
The printed press heard that the gasoline might just ignite into a fire, and this is no police force on the street.
You seem to be pretty bitter about what happened, but you don't seem to be blaming the people in this area who may have been responsible for the damage.
Well, of course we blame the people, that it wouldn't have been done if the people hadn't have done it. But we believe that it was incited by the lack of responsibility on the part of the broadcast media for telling or broadcasting that the fact that the police couldn't get in, that police cars were stalled, that main routes were clogged, and the few people who would normally do this just took advantage of it, and it had a snowballing effect.
Did you sense any underlying unrest in this community?
Oh, absolutely not, no. If you look at the mall and see what improvements have been put in over the last few years, both on the city level and the private level, the people realize what's happened here and what we've tried to do. By and large, this community appreciates the efforts of the city and the merchants, and there was no underlying tensions such as you had perhaps in '68.
So how do you explain what happens, continuing and staying here in this community?
Well, at this moment, there's not too much we can do. We are here. We're probably going to stay here. I know there are other merchants who have grave reservations about it. But as far as we're concerned, at this time, we're here. We're committed to the community and to the city, and we're going to stay.
Was this the worst looting incident that you've seen in your experience?
As far as I have seen on Gay Street or Old Town Mall, yes. This was the worst. This was worse than '68, and this was worse than the police strike. And if it hadn't been for the police department finally getting here, and one officer in particular, an Officer Ronald Starr, who was here from 12 until 3 without a walkie-talkie, without any assistance, this whole street would have been gone. And they should not have come out and said, police cars are stalled or stranded. Policemen, half of the police force cannot get into work. I mean, why try to throw gasoline on some smoke that's on the ground? Looting. Same thing happened here. It seems like the media cannot learn from past experiences. And this is what we're fighting against. We want them not. WJZ had it right out that police cars were stalled, that you could not get into work, and I know some of the radio stations had it too. And you'll hear this from every other merchant you talk to on the street that's been affected.
Not at all. Tell them no, we don't want no double factor. You might keep up on that next. We do for that. Can we get that? I'm waiting for the national. We're going to get some balls.
happened, the peanut finally came down. The National Guard on alert immediately. No, political. It's all politics. The city can't get it.
I reacted initially about when I got more information about some of the other good things that were going on here. On balance, we're not so bad, you know. But he can't deal with that, except with the judicial and penal system. And that's no solution. We know that. The burden isn't relieved, but there.
Many of the people arrested have criminal records.
Yes.
Does this suggest there's something wrong with the criminal justice system?
I'm not prepared to discuss that. I mean, it's too complicated a thing to give a blanket answer to. You know, what you need is some... all statements here need to be well-founded. And our leadership now has to be rooted in that. It has to be rooted in a daring, courageous stand that permits it to look anybody directly in the eye and say what it thinks, and what it agrees with, and what it doesn't.
Mr. Clifton, what is your concern about the leadership in the community as relates to the looting that took place in this past blizzard?
My central concern is that the leadership of the black community will not take advantage of an opportunity that is given to it to form a broad alliance within itself and to deal with the issue of setting some standards for the community itself. My concern is that the statements made about the looting will give comfort to those who believe that these events, as unhappy as they are, will persuade us to diminish our efforts to achieve full equality in this city and everywhere else in America.
The mayor says that the areas the communities hit are those communities where most of the assistance is being directed. And he's puzzled as to why the looting would take place.
Yeah, that's where we should start. He is puzzled, and many other people are puzzled. I would hazard a response to the puzzlement. You see, I have a family of 6 children, and one of the things I noticed is that a lot of children were out there in the streets taking things that were not legally theirs. And my children would not respond like that because they have been trained to do otherwise. They have values that would not permit them to easily act in that way. So, what I'm saying by implication is that we have failed to provide those standards to our community. And that as a result, we do not have a coherent code of conduct that everybody in our community knows that we stand behind.
Are you chastising the black community for what happened?
No, I'm not. What I have, the overall perspective I wanted to present, I've already handed to you in that release. The point I'm making is that here we have an opportunity to rally that broad leadership together to deal with a situation that is bigger than just looting. We are the only ones who can evolve that standard for ourselves.
It's a fact that businessmen are victims of all the vandalism. But it's also a fact that innocent residents who live in the neighborhood here are also victims. Witness Lewis's furniture store. It's burned out, but it's one of the few furniture stores who provided credit for the residents who could get credit nowhere else. It's a fact that the businessmen were victims of all the vandalism. It's also a fact that many of the residents here will be innocent victims. Many of the businessmen were victims of the vandalism, but also many residents who live in the neighborhood are also victims. Witness Lewis's furniture store. It was burned out, but Lewis also provided credit to many of the people here who could get credit nowhere else.
TV, gotta go on TV.
Not today.
Huh?
Amen.
I ride the school, let me be with you.
Ain't nobody having no food, Joe.
Yeah, there is. There's all kinds of piece of stuff in here. All this is food in here.
Channel 2.
What's in that bag? Food? Hey, it's called Spree.
I'll talk to you while you're doing this. Yeah. Everything that you're seeing is not the property. A lot of this stuff is from other cases. Only the stuff in the center of the floor and what they're bringing in now is recovered property.
Take care.
You too.
Okay. Have fun tonight. There's more stuff coming.
Okay.
Sergeant Bass, can you give us some idea as to how much of this contraband you've been able to recover?
We've recovered what you see here in back of us. We are still collecting contraband from throughout the city. We have many citizens calling us at this point, telling us where we can locate some of the merchandise. Obviously, most of it's coming from the western section of the city, the eastern section of the city, and parts of the central. It's being brought here in military vehicles, and we'll, as we pick it up and have enough to bring down here, we'll continue to keep gathering and keep bringing it in.
Sergeant, it will be a nightmare for anyone to determine just who owns what out of all of this for looting.
If my memory serves correct, you caught me off guard. I think it's about 687 now. That was as of about 8 o'clock this morning. Those figures keep going up now. That is a marked reduction, the number we have arrested. Last night, up until the early hours of this morning, we only arrested about 50, which dramatically drops compared to what we arrested Monday night.
Mike, what about processing these suspects now? That, of course, will be the job of the courts and the state's attorney's office. Are they making any progress?
Yes, they are. Now, the original Monday night when we were at our peak, the people were being taken to the courts, to the district station houses, primarily the Western District, the Eastern District. Now, we did reach the point at that time that the station houses were saturated. They couldn't handle any more people. What we were doing was, as they were arrested, we were shifting them down to other station houses where the problems weren't so great. Last night, there's been no information that I've had that they're in any kind of situation where they're overflowing. They are seeing court commissioners. They are being released on bond, being held on bond, or being held, depending upon the court commissioner, what their decision will be. And we're moving right along now.
You don't have a housing problem as of now? As far
Not
as
at this point, no.
Mike, thank you.
Okay, George.
Right. Good, thanks.
Just running over the wire, no problem. Set.
Sergeant Stein, how did you come about all this information and getting the goods back? What area of the city was this?
This was from the eastern side, over the 800 block of McKim Court and the 800 block of McAleer Court. This is where this stuff came from.
How many surprise, I don't even know what you call them. What do you call them?
We're calling them recovery teams. They go out and act on information and try to recover property that was taken during the looting.
How many teams are working?
I'm not sure at the present time. I'm not running the whole operation. I'm just part of it. That's probably at least a half a dozen.
Okay.
CID people, district people.
Mike, what is the situation right now in terms of stolen goods still out in the street, how merchants recover some of the stolen merchandise and so forth?
Well, we're getting a great deal of community cooperation right now as far as the stolen goods. The goods that you saw here this morning, we received information from concerned citizens saying where this material can be located. When we have the information, we are responding to the locations and attempting to recover the merchandise.
What about arrests last night of curfew violations and that kind of thing?
Curfew, well, there was no curfew last night, so there were no curfew arrests. There were a few, 28, I believe, arrests made for B&E related offenses. A drastic reduction over what we have experienced in the last few days.
The numbers of businesses that were hit and the amounts of merchandise that was confiscated?
No, we really don't expect to have that kind of a figure for several days. The problems we ran into, obviously, when we increased our deployment, that necessitated taking many of our criminal investigation people and individuals in non-critical staff positions and putting them on the street in uniform. Now, many of those people normally in their normal workday would compile figures such as that. What we have now is hand-tallied figures that probably will stand to be correct.
Is the police department pretty much back to normal?
This morning we ended the 12-hour shifts. We were working two shifts of 12 hours each, meaning our officers were working 12 hours, off 12 hours. As of this morning, all 9 of our districts and the tactical section have returned to their normal 8-hour deployment.